Timothy, a freshman at Lee High School, had his struggles. He especially struggled with making conversation with people he didn't know, especially if it was only one person he was talking to. One day, he heard a small voice in the back of his head that told him he needed to start being more aware and partake in being more social. That bothered Timothy, being that he really didn't like being social and was actually quite intimidated. Timothy then decided to go to the counselor, Mr. Macbeth. At first, Timothy was very intimidated by his guidance counselor, but he eventually comes around. Mr. Macbeth gives some advice on how to start conversations and gain confidence. Timothy tried to use advice, but it just didn't work. Timothy continued to struggle with opening up more to his peers. Timothy was in the hallway when he bumped into Christopher Blue, a senior who was the captain of the football team. Timothy apologized, and Christopher couldn't help but notice his shyness. Christopher was in Timothy's situation as a freshman, so Christopher gave Timothy some advice about beginning conversations with people to try and help Timothy's situation. After Timothy and Christopher's conversation, Timothy committed himself to try his best at being more social by starting in his first period. First, he said hello to his whole class awkwardly as he walked in, unsure as to how to seem outgoing. He then proceeded to greet his group members that he was working on a project with, equally as awkward as before while he was sitting down with them. The whole group then began to look at him awkwardly, and he didn't know how to handle the situation, and he began to get nervous. Having sweaty palms and breathing hard, he didn't know how to respond to the setting. He started to warm up to the situation a bit, however, as he had to talk to his group, stood his ground, and corrected someone to make sure that the project was headed in the right direction. The next day, one of his group members, Hikari Suzuki, said that she'll try and help him with talking to others and overcoming his social issues. One piece of advice Hikari gives to Timothy is that he shouldn't be afraid to share his ideas. While Hikari and Timothy were conversing, the most popular girl of Lee High School, Taylor Braun, rudely told Hikari to stop talking and began to flirt with Timothy in a manner that was obviously fake. Timothy seemed to fall for it, and Hikari just walked away in disgust, aware of what Taylor was doing. Anytime Hikari tried to talk to Timothy, Taylor would just shoo her away and gave her a little smirk. Timothy didn't know any better with the new relationship he was in. She was the popular pretty girl, and it was as though he was under her spell. The lunch bell rang, and everybody rushed to the cafeteria. That was when Timothy saw his so-called girlfriend with the popular and rich kids of the school. When he walked over and said hey to them, Taylor and her friends laughed at him as they made fun and humiliated Timothy in front of everyone in the cafeteria. Timothy was so embarrassed that he just ran out of the cafeteria while Taylor and her friends were still laughing. He eventually came back and sat down by himself, obviously defeated. Other people caught in the hierarchy began to respect Timothy for his struggles and tried to comfort him by sitting with him as he moved past the embarrassment. He acquainted with a couple of people and rekindled his friendship with Hikari. He was still teased of the incident by Taylor and her friends, and even others that just witnessed it. He luckily had his friends with him to help him cope and ignore it. Timothy became comfortable in his environment and the uneventfulness of being unpopular and gladly found his voice. He overcame his social anxiety and awkwardness. He made friends that stood by his side as he stood by theirs. The end.